The magic it may working. Okay. All right. Well, here we go. In three, two, and one. Hey, Stephen Scott, back on the Brewery Underground podcast in 2025. At the time we're recording this, Scott, man, it is early January, and it feels like it in Nashville. It is dang cold outside.
It's cold, and today's Wednesday. Come Friday, supposedly we're supposed to have snowpocalypse here in Nashville, somewhere between 4 to 7 inches. Apparently now it grows every day, so we're kind of hoping it does, at least as far as not having going to work. But it does hinder you from trying to get out of the house sometimes too. So,
All
but it is
right.
cold, man. It is cold. I don't like it.
I don't either. I'm
I don't
stocked
like it.
up on beer and all the necessities, so that's a good thing.
That's, yeah, one
Hey,
can of soup and 40 cans of beer.
exactly, exactly. We're really excited on this episode because we have on Eric Latham. He is the president of the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild and also owner of Johnson City Brewing in East Tennessee. And Eric, let's bring you in, man. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you guys doing?
Awesome. Welcome, man. We appreciate you being on.
Yeah, how are you guys doing besides freezing your butts off out there?
It's pretty good. Since like Christmas and New Year's, the kind of the holidays and going back, traffic has still been fairly light, even up through today. Even this is kind of the first week back. And I know Steve doesn't have to drive to work because he works from home, but traffic's been pretty decent. So living in
Yeah,
Nashville, you'll take that.
yeah,
Yeah,
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
yeah. Fingers crossed. Yeah, you gotta love it. Well, it's cold outside. I'll tell you
Yeah.
what, though. For me, the beer is cold inside, and that's all that matters. And I don't know what you guys are drinking tonight, if anything, but our good buddy Carl Meyer of Black Abbey, they have this Edley's Barbecue Golden Ale that I've
Yeah.
not had before.
Oh
Look at
yeah.
that. And I picked that up over the holidays at a beer store in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Nashville. So looking forward to drinking this thing tonight.
That
What's
is
it called?
awesome.
Is it Edley's Barbecue? Golden?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
collab with Edley's Barbecue here in
Yeah.
Nashville.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
good
Oh,
barbecue joint.
yeah. I was thinking that was just the name of the beer, and I said that's a pretty interesting name. I thought you were going to say like smoked porter or something like that.
Yeah, like
Edley's Barbecue, but it's a golden
Yeah, it's
ale.
Golden Ale. Yeah, it's Black
Yeah.
Abbey's collab with Edley's Barbecue Golden Ale.
Now I
it,
gotta visit Edley's Barbecue.
yeah, it's good, and I know they've always got it on draft because that's where I've had it. Steve, I've never seen it in the can like that. They've always got it on draft across the street.
Yeah, I haven't had this one yet, so I'm looking forward to drinking it. How about you?
Cheers, Eric. What have you got?
Well, yeah, I feel kind of bad here. I'm drinking some tea because I gotta burn the midnight oil tonight. I'm working on a plan for an event in Rhode Island coming up in June. So I've got a little tea going. But as soon as I finish this cup of tea, I'm probably going to reach into the cooler and find something cold and fermented.
There you go. You know all about that, don't you?
A thing or two.
Well, fellas, this is kind of a momentous occasion for me, and Eric, I'm glad you're here for this. Do you know the app, the Beer Up Untapped? You
Oh yeah.
familiar with that? You probably do. So tonight I am checking in my 10,000th unique beer, and the
Wow.
next one, which is so Steve, you're gonna like this one. It's from Rheingeist. It's Bourbon Barrel Aged Night Whale.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
Wow.
think it doesn't say ink, but I think it's a form of ink. At least it looks like it. It's from 2021. It's 15.5%. And if this thing comes off the rails halfway through, you'll know why. So, so as soon as I check this in, I'll do that later. But this is my 10,000th unique beer. So cheers to you guys, and glad you're a
Cheers.
part of it.
Yeah, too bad
So
we
you're
haven't
saying
come
I
up
may
with
have to take over tonight then?
we haven't
Yeah,
come up with the technology yet to share a beer over this
I know.
thing.
I would because I would totally share this one with you guys because this is what 22 ounces or something. So I will drink it all, but throughout the course of the episode. Anyway, look at that. You can see that.
Yeah,
Let me
that's a
cover that
beauty.
thing. Nice. Okay.
All right, awesome. Well, Eric, again, we appreciate you having us on, and we want to get into what the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild exactly is. Can you really give us an overview? Because it's an interesting organization that really helps a lot of brewers across the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, so the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild is one that I'm actually relatively new to. Was founded in 2012 by a number of the breweries in the Nashville area. And they started organizing and getting together and starting to think of ways they could work together. And we primarily work on things like legislation affecting craft beer or craft beverages, including the spirits and the wine as well. And we also try to work on working with farmers in Tennessee to try and use more materials to brew beers using Tennessee materials. And along with that, we like to get together and socialize and drink some beer too. And that at the end of the day, it's funny because there's a lot of serious things happening in the industry and right now, and there's some challenges going on. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun to say, hey, there are brewers like me all across Tennessee, over 100 breweries, I think now, something like 9,500 or 10,000 people that are employed by breweries, and they're all across Tennessee. And they're facing some of the same challenges that I am, trying to not only make a nice product, but run a business, a sustainable business. And but those are pretty much the things we like to do. We work on legislation. We like to try to use Tennessee materials and refer to each other on that, and then socialize, get together, and have a cold one.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. Like, you talk about over 100 breweries across the state. From like a business standpoint, what are like some of the collective concerns that you frequently hear across the state from brewery owners that you talk to?
I think it's we participate. There's a local guild here in the Tri-Cities I participate in. Obviously, we participate in the state one, and then participate in the national one. And I think it's probably some of the same challenges that we're facing here in Tennessee that brewers across America are. And you guys have probably read some of these articles or seen some of this data about, we probably have the most, or at least 2 or 3 years ago, had the most breweries that we've ever had in America, close to 9 or 10,000 breweries. So that's definitely a crowded market. And then, Americans, I think, we started in 2014 and had a nice 5-year run. I saw somebody on social media last night said 2019 was the last good year we had.
Oh.
Not just beer, but in general, I think they were
Mhm.
talking about it. And a lot of changes happened during COVID, not just health related, and some changes, of course, that are going to go on for decades. There will be books written about the changes that happened, but I do think that it probably COVID changed our drinking patterns or drinking styles, or at least our social habits. And one good thing that happened during COVID, if you were able to survive it, you adapted, and people drank a lot of to-go beer, of course.
Yeah.
And they were taking, we never sold more packaged beer than we did during that period. But I think from a social standpoint, people were in, then they started working remote jobs and stayed home more often. And what we humans have been doing, socializing in a public place for a couple of millennia, took a pretty hard hit, I think, just because people were staying home. And so here we are, some years removed from COVID, depending on when you say and if you say, and people are still staying at their tap rooms and not heading out there just for a big beer release.
One of the things that I really like that's on your website is talking really about the economic impact that breweries have as a whole in Tennessee. And I don't think like us beer drinkers always think about that. You do from your standpoint. Can you really expand on that? Because that's an important thing.
Yeah, I think we've got like a stat on there, and it may be from 2022. That's something like an economic impact of 1.3 billion. When you say a term like that, it kind of blows my mind because I'm, looking in my wallet for $1.3. So, but I don't know if I can speak to the specific numbers that way as to what they are these days. But I mean, just like any industry here, I mean, brewers, we're running businesses, we're employing people, we're using Tennessee ingredients whenever we can. Breweries are known to, as we talked about a little earlier, known to be great tourism draws and to areas, and also downtown economic developers in a number of ways. So there's probably some number out there that's a tangible number that says this is exactly how much money we bring to the state. And then there's, the intangible kind of things, or the kind of secondary or tertiary impacts that you say, well, these people wanted to come visit this brewery in Nashville, and they're staying at hotels and they're eating at these restaurants and they're taking cabs and things like that. So I would say it's a tremendous impact, but I don't know that exact number for you.
That's
Well,
okay. But when you had started, your brewery about 10 years ago, and we'll get to that eventually. I mean, did right away, did you even start thinking about that? Like, I'm making a difference from an economic standpoint in the state of Tennessee with my brewery that's open. Is that something that you even thought about in the beginning?
Yeah, and I don't want to get too much into our story right away, but I mean, the whole reason why our brewery exists is that I was trying to work with the president of economic development to recruit, you guys have never heard of this brewery, Stone Brewing, to come to Johnson City.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was a home brewer, and my buddy was the president of economic development. He said, hey, man, you're a brewer. Help me do these videos and try to recruit these guys. They were trying to do, you guys probably remember this back then, about 10, 15 years ago, a lot of the West Coast breweries were like, hey, we should set up shop on the East Coast. So Stone was one of those, and they put out an RFP. It eventually came down to Columbus or Richmond, and they chose right outside of Richmond, Virginia. But I mean, the whole point of it was that we understood that what breweries had been doing and would do for Main Street America, small town America, downtown areas, is that they would bring people there, and those people would bring more people, and they would bring dollars to spend. So it was really not just a boom for breweries over the past 30 or 40 years. It was a boom for America.
For sure. Part of that number, that 1.3 billion for the state, does any of that include state tax?
I would say it probably would have to.
And I'm kind of leading somewhere with that, but yeah, that's a huge number. Like that, yes, the state loves it because the state gets all this tax money. And where I'm going with this is, doesn't Tennessee have the worst beer taxes or beer laws in the country?
Yeah, well, I know that we have the highest wholesale per barrel tax at $35.60 a barrel. I don't know exactly. We're definitely top or worse, depending on how you look at that.
Yeah.
We're number one. We're number one.
Not the way you want to be. Yeah.
Not the way you want to be.
Right.
But we do have that. And from what I understand, going back to Stone was actually looking at Tennessee for a while, but the beer laws, I understand Sierra Nevada was looking at Tennessee, but the beer laws were, have you guys heard that too, that Sierra was looking here?
Yep. They were looking on just the other side of where they are now, basically in East Tennessee.
Yep. And so that's a big one. I don't know if Carl Meyer or any of these other folks that you talked about here in Tennessee, if they've kind of dug into that a little bit, but it's a bit of a challenge we have here in Tennessee related to the wholesale tax, because that wholesale tax goes to the municipalities. So it goes to the local towns, cities, and counties. And that's money that's, funding their budget for a variety of things. And it would be tough to try and take that away from them.
It would, but wouldn't
that? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, but wouldn't that stunt growth for additional breweries within the state too? I'm sure they don't look at it that way, but we've seen a surge here in the last 10 or 15 years in Nashville with breweries coming on, and even though the tax is so high, they're still growing here. When I moved here, it was basically just Blackstone. And how they survived since 1994, being the only one, was amazing. And and it's still grown even with that that high tax. So, just wondering, like, does that not factor into their equation, or they just rather have the tax money?
Well, it's a tricky one, right? Because I mean, earlier today I was paying barrelage taxes and manufacturing taxes and, well, liquor by the drink, because we do spirits at our place too. But you get taxed a lot more than a regular business for making and selling alcohol. And that's a challenge, understand the state that we live in. Everybody's got their own beliefs and that kind of thing. But the wholesale one, like I said, is tricky because all the other ones go directly to the state. The wholesale one goes to the cities and counties. So, the truth be told is that I think that our guild, and we have a group of people both on our board and across the industry in Tennessee that are smart enough and have the creativity enough to figure out a way to, make sure we're not, taking too much away from the towns and cities that need their funding, but also reward business owners and breweries for taking that chance, taking that risk, making big investments. And really what we've done ever since Kent and Blackstone and maybe Bosco's even way back when have been doing up until now, which is helping Tennessee bring back Main Street in Tennessee. Yeah. And that would be a nice way to just work on that and figure that out. And we're trying for it again. It's a tough issue, but we want to try and take it on and do right by as many parties as we can.
Yeah, when you look at that, like the wholesale tax, there's so many issues. Obviously, the state legislature always has to deal with. Where do you think you guys rank on their pecking order of? Are you able to get it on the agenda each year and somebody's looking at it and a group of lawmakers? Where does it stand, do you think?
Yeah, we got on our board, we also work with, we have a lobbyist, we've got an attorney, and those guys are really smart. They've been with us for several years, and they have all those connections. And I think that's what it really comes down to is who you're connected to, who you know, and not so much like in a cronyistic way or nepotism or anything like that, but more just the connections and trying to either plead your case or explain to them exactly what we're talking about right now, which is, hey, if we're willing to put the time and effort in, if you are, we breweries, we have an economic impact like we do to that level, and let's work this thing out.
Yeah,
if you have,
being that you just recently took over as president, I mean, how much has this been a learning experience for you?
Did you say me? I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Yeah,
who.
yeah,
Me
like
taking over as president?
yeah. Well, since you taking over as president, like how much has all this been a pretty big learning experience for you?
Well, so we're starting our second year. There are 2-year terms on the board, and I was on the board as just a board member in the previous term. So it's kind of a little bit of a buildup. I've been able to essentially, since COVID hit, watch the evolution of the craft beer industry in Tennessee. And it's interesting. Some of it's political, not COVID, but the evolution of, I mean, that's political too. but how craft beer has evolved and how at the state level we try to work on legislation. And there's some folks that are not as supportive of alcohol manufacturers, and there are some folks I think that if we take on that issue, that's kind of like, you guys would have to see these meetings. That's kind of like the untouchable, like the big issue, the unsolvable issue. And for me, it's on our docket this year is that I've got one more year of my term as president here, but I'd like to at least come up with a game plan that we can say, hey, this is a creative way. Let's at least have conversations. And you guys know this, they don't happen in in a single year or single term. There, it's like the expansion of the self-distribution that started with us here and in Bristol with Senator Lumberg, and it took us 4 years to get him to do it. And by the end of it, we didn't even have a seat at the table at Johnson City Brewing, I mean. And that started with a senator coming into our tap room and saying, how can I help you guys? And I said, we've chosen to self-distribute. We can't do it out of our county. Let's see if we can expand that. That'll help grow our business. It took 4 years and we weren't even involved later on. So I think to me, it's kind of like what Sharon, our last executive director, did. She laid a nice foundation and platform for our new executive director that's coming on. And same thing with this wholesale tax. We've built some information and kind of done a little homework on how everybody feels on it. And now it's time to put a plan together to do something.
When you see, whether it's within your 2 years or just any time with the board or with the guild, when new lawmakers are coming in or potentially coming in, do you try to, you try to push for them, you vote for them because they're, or do you try to swing them your way? You know what I mean? When you get new blood in there and you're trying to okay.
I mean, honestly, I ain't that smart. I ain't that political, I guess, is that we know some of the guys that are coming, the new ones, and it's less of like a political thing for us and more just recognizing that some people that were helping us or not helping us in the past have been voted out or didn't win their primaries. And we've got new people that are coming in. And so it's really about kind of seeing where they stand on alcohol manufacturing and then seeing, letting them know some of our biggest challenges And we do that by having a day on the hill. We're supposed to be having one of those coming up where we meet up there and we have meetings with them and just say, hey, here's the challenge we're facing. Can we count on you for some help?
There was a law that was changed. I say law, maybe it was a law, but I think it was a law. 2017, I believe it was, when Tennessee went from, I think, 6.3% to 10 or 1.1% was considered high grav now. Were you guys involved in that? Did you guys push that issue and get that to happen?
Well, we were real supportive of it. I don't know how much,
Clearly you twisted an arm or two.
Little Johnson City Brewing. Actually, I will tell you, this is a funny story, is that we were involved with that as much as we could, which was to, and this is really before our involvement with the guild. Part of the reason, I have to tell you this story later too, is part of the reason why I got involved with the guild was because I was maybe causing trouble by trying to get the self-distro laws changed on my own. And
like, this guy over here, what the hell is he doing? We got to get him on board.
Well, it woke some folks up, and we got together as a group, and like I said, they took it from there and did a great job. But the ABV law, it went up to 6.2 by weight, and then 10.1 by volume. And we fought for that. We were excited about that, especially because, North Carolina, as I understand it, is 15 plus. The Rhine guys that you just had is 15 and a half. Virginia, our neighbor over here close to us, does not have a limit on ABV. So you want to brew a 40% beer if you call that beer.
Yeah, look out.
Yeah, but I remember it because we made a special beer January 1st, 2017 was when the change of gravity changed, and we loved it. We planned this thing like 6 months before that. We brewed an imperial stout that we called Hail Sagan, after Carl Sagan.
Yeah,
and the Cosmos and all that stuff, and so we called it Hail Sagan, black as can be, thick as can be, and a 10.1. And at midnight, for our New Year's party, we busted it out and poured everybody a big old sample of that. So
that's great.
Yeah,
I bet it was really good too, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, whether it was good or whether it wasn't,
yeah,
it was really good.
That's what's funny, and it's a funny thing. It's breweries. It doesn't matter if they're here or anywhere across the state and you've had them. There's a lot of them that max out at 10.1. You know what I mean? Which I love. I see. Oh, you got 3 on the menu that are exactly 10.1. I love it. I came to the right place. You know what I mean?
We call those ish beers.
Yeah. I love it. I see that. I'm like, okay, wink, wink. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's some other breweries now that have gone, we'll call this one 9.8.
Yes. Yeah. We don't want to ride. We don't want to be. Yeah, we don't want to ride the line that.
Can't all be 10.1.
That's exactly right. Start looking at it. Yeah. But if you can actually make it in this state past that, but you got to have a distilling license too, right? Which is a whole nother thing. Is that the thing? Yeah.
And we actually have a brew distillery here. This is, I think, something that happened around the country, but you've got a number of breweries that also have distilleries, and they're calling them brew distilleries.
Oh yeah,
I've seen those, and they're manufacturing beer and spirits at the same time.
Okay, which covers the gauntlet for them, right? They can do whatever they want to and go backwards.
Well, truly, it's interesting because one of the trends that's happening, Americans supposedly drank the least amount of beer by volume in 2023 than they have in like 30 years or whatever it was. And I think some of that 2023 was also the year Bud Light had their challenge. If you remember that one.
That's right.
I think that was a year, but so that played into it some, but I think also it's because Americans are diversifying what they're drinking. The seltzers, the RTDs, the ready to drink cocktails. And so these brew distilleries, that might be smart to actually start to distill too, because you can make those cocktails.
Yeah, which probably, I don't know, but probably are really cheap to make.
Yeah. Oh yeah. My dad. So before I got into journalism, I was in biology because both my parents are biochemists. Really smart. We love science, our family.
Yeah.
And but my dad, when I said, we're starting a brewery, Dad, and he was like, great. I'm one of 7 kids. Great. This one's successful. He's making beer. And I was like, what's science, Dad? And he said, well, how long does it take to make a batch of beer? And I said, well, ales are 2-3 weeks, lagers, 8 weeks, about. And he said, why are you waiting that long? And this is the chemist in him coming out. He said, we can just ship in drums of ethanol and put some flavoring and some carbonation in there. And you got, 2-3 days, you're good to go.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's not craft brewing, man. That's
It's not. It's not. It's like trying to speed up like a good whiskey. You
Yeah.
got to have those years in, and you can do a whole bunch of things to try to speed it up, but it's not
Yes.
quite the same.
Not the same.
Hey, I was going to ask you this. Again, more laws, but I can get shipping beer into Tennessee. It seems to be a little weird, and maybe that's the wholesale tax. Maybe it's something else. I can do a company like Beer Drop, which is like a subscription service, and once a month they send you something. It's got 10 random beers in it. But if I reach out to Burial out of Asheville, North Carolina, they say, hey, we can't ship to your state. Is that anything we can't ship, or is there some procedural stuff they have to go through, and they're just like, yeah, we're not doing that? Do you know anything about the shipping into the state thing?
Well, first of all, Burial makes some great beer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they do.
I always joke about, because I probably know this much of the iceberg of knowledge when it comes to brewing. I'll admit that I didn't go to brewing school or anything, and I love making beer. It's fantastic. But those guys give me brewer's jealousy all the time, just like a lot of breweries across Tennessee do. But I would say it's probably a combination of things. Our national association, the Brewers Association, it's kind of our national guild, has been working on that for a little while to allow shipping of beer through the post office to clear up some of their regs across the entire country. But it's probably a combination of, regulations between states. And then also it can be a lot of paperwork and permitting and fees and extra fees and things like that. So you start wondering. It's like a brewery, and my friend LeBron down in Common John down in Manchester. I don't know if you guys know them.
Yeah.
Bron's a good guy. I was talking to him a couple of days ago, and we helped pass a law here in Johnson City during COVID that it was a law to allow breweries to deliver directly to people's homes. It was actually, I think they allowed it statewide, and then for a while, and it expired, but we worked on that law. And so LeBron was looking into that. But it's always a question of, is this going to help or hurt our business? And how much is it going to distract us? How much money are we going to make off doing this with all the time and energy and resources that are put into it? So a short way of answering your question is probably a combination of things.
It would make sense. Yeah. Because if one is willing to do it, I guess they're the ones that can ship in for whatever that cost is, right? Or whatever that process is. But the other one's like, nah, it's not worth it. And now Burial's actually distributing here, so it's not that big of a deal anymore. But there was a time when. Do
you guys remember when, like 10 years ago or so, when people were like, what would you call that? Like coyote, or like they're like bootlegging beer from Boston, and like people are bringing in Pliny and Alchemist.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, hey, yeah, I've got a buddy that's going to Boston or Brooklyn.
Yeah.
He's going to bring some other half. How much do you guys want?
like
Exactly.
like a smaller version of Smokey and the Bandit, crossing state lines.
Yeah, I think it's changed now, though, guys.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the same as it used to be.
I don't think so. I think distribution has a lot to do with it. Again, in a brewery, and this, like with Burial, like you still have to be able to supply your core business before you can start distributing out of state, right? We have to. Burial's got multiple. I keep using them because they're my favorite brewery of all time. But they've got multiple locations within the state. We want to ship out of state. We got to make sure we can make enough beer for them and what we're doing here, and not to piss anybody else off locally.
That's it. And it's going to be better business doing it in state, just because there's less regulations and permitting and fees and all the nice paperwork that we brewers love to do.
Yeah. There's a couple brands I could mention, like New Glarus and Russian River's another one. Would they actually distribute to a few states? But it's like, hey, we're just going to keep it in house for the most part. You want to come get it, but you're going to have to come here to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. New Glarus, those guys have done a nice thing. That's a business model right there. And they still have, it's like, hey guys, I got this case of spotted cow. They still got that going on.
Yes, if anybody's with like sniffing distance of Wisconsin, hey man, can you breathe?
Yeah, really.
Can I get some spotted cow, a mixed case, anything, please? We get nothing down here.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm curious. We has talked so much on this podcast about the brewery experience. And I know your brewery is a big one as far as like trying to be more family friendly, get people in. And we're seeing that a lot of breweries know, whether it's other states or here. Do you think that's something that's also helping your cause with the state legislature as well when you're trying to get them to get more support, that you are a family friendly brewery and you're just not a brewery where, it's maybe a stigma or something? Do you think that's something that is getting the message is getting across?
Uh, if the question is the message getting across, I think slowly but surely. I mean, it's a cultural thing. In Johnson City, when we're the longest running brewery here, and a year after us, Yeehaw started. If you know those guys, you heard
Oh
of
yeah.
Oh
Yeehaw
yeah.
before, yeah. So their original place is here that we started, and then a year later they came here. But when we first opened, my wife and I, we got messages online that were saying some pretty not supportive and negative things.
Yeah.
And I can look back and laugh at it now, but we knew right then that it was going to be a little bit of an uphill battle culturally. And I think that Tennessee has come a long way that way, but we've got a ways to go. I think there's still kind of to me, there's kind of drinking for drinking's sake, and then there's craft
Yeah.
beer. I don't think they're exactly the same thing. It's the same reason why I'd call our two tap rooms or tasting rooms instead of calling them a bar, is that
Yeah.
I love going to a dive bar and getting a bucket
Yeah.
of blues and being with friends. There's a time and place for that kind of thing. But I think that craft brewing, as we talked about earlier, has done so many things for not just the economy, but helping bring back towns across Tennessee.
Yeah.
And you know what? You bring up a good thing once again. Is my, I guess, 3 years on the board for the guild, going into my fourth year now. I've been looking for that one issue that all of we brewers and by proxy all their communities can put their shoulder behind, because I think it would be amazing. I think if we had some kind of, even if we had something like the Tennessee Craft Beer Modernization Act, where we brought forward a number of things, craft beverage modernization act. We can work with the spirits and wine again too, just bring things forward that make it both friendly for breweries to start in Tennessee, but just continue to have that awareness campaign to say, craft beer is much more than beer. And I'm hoping finally to publish my book about opening a brewery this year. It's called Bigger Than Beer. And it's not because my wife Kat and I are bigger than beer. There's nothing to do with that. But this whole movement,
Yeah.
the whole movement was bigger than beer. It was
Sure.
everything. It was supporting community and art and music and food and all kinds of things, and people getting together. And that should be memorialized. And it's just like you guys are doing here. And that's why I appreciate what you're doing, is that this is memorializing, this is recording this time that we're living in right now, where craft brewing has boomed in Tennessee and is having a major impact.
No, and I really agree with that. I mean, like I said, we go to breweries and we see it more and more. You walk into a lot of breweries and you may see families in there with kids. You may see dogs. People are just relaxing and having a good time. And I think, hey, state legislature in Tennessee, look at that, because I think
Yeah.
I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you listen to, and I know you know Anthony Davis, and you probably talked to him about his new location. Man, what he's done with that place, with not just the physical and the visual of it, but what he's done to break it up with, it's 15 and up age wise to go upstairs, right? So you don't,
Got the
downstairs you can
dog
have as
park.
many, you can have as many little babies running around and dogs running around downstairs, but you go upstairs and that's a different thing. It's a different, not a different vibe, but it's a different, different people up there. You don't have kids running around there. So if adults want to go somewhere, and they can be as family friendly as you want, but go upstairs and like, hey, maybe we can get away from that if you don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that culture is part of, if you looked at the past 20, 25 years, and not just in Tennessee, but craft beer in general, that they've gone in phases that way. It used to be 10 years ago, craft brewing tap rooms were really about the beer and the releases and all that stuff. What's happened over the past few years, I think, has that the culture of it has evolved even more, and the business model has had to evolve, and we've had to adapt to being inclusive of families, communities, but taking it a step further than that, which is you got a dog park, you got a playground for the kids to be on, you got something to do. It's
Yeah.
about having experiences and doing something while you're there. And it's got to be that way. If you look at the demographics, from what I've seen, is that the 30 to 39 are drinking some more of these RTDs and mixing it up a little bit. And then the 20 to 29, I should say 21 to 29. Hey, 18 to
maybe in some states. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, if you're able to serve in the military, you should be able to have a beer.
Exactly right.
There you go.
But at least the 21 to 29, they're choosing not to drink alcohol at all.
Yeah.
They're doing NAs, or they're doing the Cali sober thing. They're doing CBD or THC beverages and things like that. So it's really changing, and it's interesting to, we work in it every day. We're cleaning the tanks. I'm still doing that. But if you pull yourself back and look at the past 10 years, I tried to do that last year because it's like 10 years in this thing.
Yeah.
We were celebrating, but I wanted to take a look at, how far we've come and then how far the industry's come. And it's really changed over the last 3, 4, 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, we're seeing some, and this is part of, so in Nashville, and you've probably seen across the board on a bigger scale, but I call it settling out. There seems to be a settling out of some breweries. I know around here we've had several close recently, several in the past year or two. Are you seeing that across the state? And is there a settling out? Because maybe for whatever reason that might be, whether they're adapting or not, or whatever the criteria is for them disappearing. But we're having breweries disappear. We're having some grow, but then we're losing some at the same time. Do you see a trend there across the state?
Yeah. I mean, I see it across the state and I see it across the nation is that we're losing a lot of breweries. And, the sad part is some really good ones, some that are making fantastic beer.
Good Lord. Anchor goes away, and is it Lagunitas or Leinenkugel's out of Wisconsin, 150 years old, and they close that plant. Yeah.
And it's and this has changed too, the home brewing side of things. And the reason why I'm saying this is because in the beginning, when we first opened, we would have home brewers coming to us all the time saying, we're going to open a brewery. And I was like, that's great. And they said, what can you say? And I said, the biggest and the hardest lesson I learned in the beginning was there's a difference between brewing and the business of brewing. And it's not just, did you pay your taxes and are you keeping up and are you working in it and on it? Is sometimes, you have major, transnational corporations that are buying up brands and then saying, nah, that's not good enough. And they could have, beer that I wish I could brew,
Right.
But it's a really sad thing. I am seeing that across. And I think that it's just it's the industry that we live in right now. It was very saturated for a while. So the marketplace is saturated. I think people are changing up their drinking habits. And as with any industry or business or economy, is that if you don't watch it close and adapt and do whatever it takes to keep rolling, probably not going to last very long.
Well said.
Yeah, and two things we just talked about that really add to that is the family aspect, and then the diversity in what you drink at a place. Like if you can adapt to those two things, I think that's a big chunk of it. You've got something that everyone can come, everyone in the family can come, and there's something for everyone there.
Yeah, I was working on my business plan. Our Kat and I are the majority owners of our company. Well, we've got some co-owners, some friends and family that invested in us over the years, and so I'm working on my next 10-year plan. They said, "What's the next 10 years?" And one of the big headlines is you got to diversify those revenue streams. It can't just be how many pints of beer did you sell on Friday. You've got to have ticketed events. You've got to have people renting your space. You got to look into doing other things, some beer related, some not.
Yeah.
And that's just the world that we're living in right now.
Eric, wanted to switch gears on a very positive initiative that you do with the Tennessee Craft Brewers Guild, and that is the Farm to Tap program. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that and what exactly that is and what it means for you all?
Yeah, Farm to Tap is a wonderful program. It's a state-funded program, and you guys know this. I think the two words on the Tennessee flag or the emblem is commerce and agriculture, or agriculture and commerce, and so that really speaks to what Farm to Tap is trying to work with Tennessee farmers and use Tennessee ingredients to make fermented beverages, and then the programming that goes along with that. So water, hops, yeast, malt. How can we support all those things? The farmers along with it, and then all the brewers across Tennessee. And it was one that was born out of wanting to do those things. And we were able to get it for, I guess it was the first 3 years as an add-on. We're not in the budget. And then this past session 1 year ago, the legislature said that they were making a number of cuts, and we didn't make the cut. So I think the first year was 350,000, and the second 2 years were 400,000. They had bumped it up a little bit, but they said, we're making some cuts, and we still did our day on the hill and made our case for it. But they said, you guys are on the list of things, especially since we weren't there's a term for it, like reoccurring or something like that on the budget.
Mhm.
And because we were just an extra thing, we got cut for 2025 this year. So we got our funding for 2024, but we didn't get 2025. And over the next couple of months, we're going to try to get it reinstated again. And it was funding that was really important to support that relationship between farmers and brewers. And then also identify new avenues. We don't have a malt house here in Tennessee. I don't think so, at least a commercial scale one. And a lot of malt, like I think there's Clarksville. Is that just northwest of you all, Clarksville?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's some barley that's grown there that gets malted down in Asheville, just an hour south of us. But, malt house has been something that we're trying to support. We're looking for the crazy person that wants to try and start one.
You're looking at two of them.
Yeah. Are you really looking into it?
No, I have no idea what that is.
Well, it's a lot of fun to go through that process, but it's like brewing a beer. A lot of people from the outside say, "Man, you got the best job in the world." Well, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and we mess up a lot too, and that kind of thing. And if it's a business, you better not mess up too much. So, but things like the malt, hops, growing more hops and having programs and connecting hop growers. We actually got a lot. We've got several hop growers here in Tennessee now that brewers are getting more and more from. And so it's a program that had been very helpful for a few years. We were sad that in last year's session we didn't get it this time around, but we're hopeful that it'll happen again.